all of the biggest banks on Wall Street coming out with their first ratings on SpaceX, pretty much unanimously a really good story for SpaceX. So let's run this down. JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, RBC, Berenstein, Macquarie, UBS, all running buy ratings, all looking for good price targets. Standout here today is Morgan Stanley, coming out with a $300 price target at $150 per share right now. That's basically doubling over where they're sitting.
SpaceX went public on June 12 at $135 a share. 4 days later, it was at $225. At the end of trading on July 17th, it closed at a fresh all-time low of $131, clearly below where it started. Short sellers are sitting on $8 billion in profits right now, betting against a stock that Wall Street's biggest banks were just weeks ago telling everyone to buy. And I mean all of them. When the quiet period ended and banks were finally allowed to publish research, 15 firms put out ratings. 15 said buy. Morgan Stanley came in at $300. Goldman, $205. Every single underwriter on this deal was bullish on the exact stock their own bank had just sold to the public. The only two firms willing to say otherwise had nothing to do with the IPO at all. So here's the thing about the stock market. Since you can't personally check SpaceX's books, and you can't sit on the board meetings, you definitely can't verify if Elon Musk's own revenue projections are realistic. So you trust a chain of people to stand between you and the company that's asking for your money. But that only works if they're more loyal to you than to the guy that's cutting their paycheck. Well, we've seen this scenario fail before, and not that long ago either. Back in the dot-com boom, an analyst named Henry Blodgett was writing buy in public reports on stocks he was privately calling junk in his own emails. Another one, Jack Grubman at Citigroup, upgraded a stock right around the time his firm was chasing a banking deal with that same company. Because the bank wanted the business and a bad rating might cost them the deal. It wasn't just these two guys alone either. It got so bad that in 2003, 10 of the biggest firms on Wall Street paid $1.4 billion to settle it, and the regulators forced real structural changes on the whole industry. Research had to be walled off from banking. Analysts got banned from IPO pitch meetings entirely. And Congress even passed part of Sarbanes-Oxley specifically to protect analysts from being punished for telling the truth. So given all that, why does SpaceX look exactly the same? Simply enough, because a lot of the walls have quietly come down. In 2015, regulators replaced the old settlement with something called FINRA Rule 2241, basically a permanent version of the same rules run by the industry itself instead of a court. Sounds good in theory, but what about in practice? This past December, the original 2003 settlement was formally terminated. Done. The actual court order that started this whole thing, the one with independent monitors watching over it, no longer applies anywhere. 6 months afterwards, SpaceX runs the biggest IPO in history, and every single bank involved comes out swinging with a buy rating. Now, to be fair, this probably isn't fraud. Nobody broke a law that we know of. Morgan Stanley's own note admitted that the stock could be worth anything from between $600 to $75. You just have to take a pick. Which is honestly them just shrugging their shoulders. Even Goldman, while still bullish, modeled that SpaceX will need something like $275 billion in debt over the next few years, with no positive cash flow until the end of the decade. So the banks aren't lying to you exactly. They're telling you it's a long, expensive, genuinely uncertain bet, while rating it a buy anyway. And there's one more detail worth noting. That first wave of bullish research tends to land right around when early investors' shares come out of lockup, meaning the loudest buy often shows up exactly when it's most convenient for people already holding the stock to sell into the hype. No one is trying to prove intent here, but this is the exact scenario that regulators were trying for 20 plus years to prevent. Now, I don't know if SpaceX is worth $200 or $75. Neither does anyone else, honestly, including the people making these calls. But here's what I do know. Markets run on trust, that the numbers are real, that the research is honest, that the guy telling you to buy isn't the guy who benefits most if you do. That trust doesn't exist on its own. It has to be protected on purpose, because left alone, the incentives point the other way. We spent 2 decades building walls around that problem, and we've spent the last few years quietly taking them back down. Now, this is worth remembering. Next time a bank's own analyst tells you to buy the stock that the same bank just got paid to sell. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.